Right, hello everybody, welcome to the Clery football channel, and we've just got so much to get through here, I'm not even going to really bother with an introduction. Right, Arsenal Man City. On one side, a team who set up in a way that allowed them to dominate the game but could not break Manchester City down, and on the other, a team that ended the match as defensive as we have ever seen Pep Guardiola, but then all just switched off in the 92nd minute. And I don't know what this was like for normal people to watch, right? But this 1-1 was internet tactic nerd Christmas. So let's unwrap our presents. Now just dead quick before we get started here. Channel memberships, okay? We have launched those. They're the part of the project I am most excited about us doing. We'll have a full, proper announcement video later in the week, but if you do like the sound of those, you get to help pick the videos. There are regular bonus videos with a live chat function, so the analysis is all interactive between me and you. You get discounts on merch, because finally, merch and all the other cool stuff that YouTube throws in. There'll be more about it this week, as I say, but the link is in the description if you're already excited about that idea. But now let's just get on with this. So, your starting lineups, right? And for Manchester City, the only surprises were that there were no surprises. But over here, if the Arsenal fans I personally know were anything to go off, as soon as this came out, there was immediately a bit of a feeling that Arteta was possibly playing it a bit too safe. But the early exchanges probably played out as Arteta would have wanted. City pressed them high, sometimes in a 4-4-2 like this with Silva trying to rush the defenders, but sometimes just in a 4-5-1 with Foden going out wide from his central position to try and stop balls into the midfield. But that didn't really do anything. I thought Arsenal kept playing both over and through Man City quite well and kept finding players, in particular Merino and Trossard, in pockets to get at the back line. But of course, the problem with that, and this was just sort of apparent right from the first minute, was that neither Merino nor Trossard were going to be capable of opening Man City up. They couldn't find Victor Gyökeres, they couldn't take any City players out of the game, and all Arsenal really had going forward in that first half was Noni Madueke, who I think, and maybe this is an entirely separate video somewhere down the line, has been brilliant for Arsenal, but brilliant in an individual sense. He will skin people, he'll get in behind, he'll open things up, but doesn't seem to link well with any of the lads who end up playing around him. So he sort of gets in these 2v1, 1v1 situations, does really well, and then very rarely do you see anything sort of come from it. So for me, the story of Arsenal's first half was that the link-up play was working really well with Merino and Trossard, but that wasn't doing anything, and Madueke was doing things but wasn't linking up well with the players around him. So you don't get any big chances, you don't get any goals. In fact, their first chance wasn't even until the 32nd minute, and the best opening they had was Madueke in this position, which you are so unlikely to actually score from. Therefore, the game plan for Arsenal clearly not working in that first half. But do you know whose game plan was working? This season, Pep Guardiola wants Manchester City to be different. He wants them to be less obsessed with having the ball at the back, hence just slinging Donnarumma in. He wants them to be better at going from back to front really quickly and hitting teams in transition. And I know 95% of you won't be, but if you are unfamiliar with that term, it basically just means whenever the ball changes hands or feet, right, as soon as you get it back, no matter where you get it back on the pitch, you are set up to attack really quickly before the opposition can get themselves back in their defensive shape, before they can get organised. And that's why they've gone from having the most possession every single season in the Premier League since Pep Guardiola took over to what are they currently? 8th? 9th in the table for possession? They're not really interested anymore in these uninterrupted sequences of 30, 40, 50, 60 passes. There's no point hanging onto the ball when nothing's happening, when you can get the ball and make something happen. And that's the first goal. Arsenal are trying to counter-press really aggressively, which gives Gabriel the idea that he needs to stop Haaland turning. And if you were to freeze time itself and ask Mikel Arteta, are you happy with this exact situation? Do you know what he'd say? He'd say, yes I am, and who are you? They're hunting in packs, Haaland's touch is loose, the centre-back jumps, you're man for man here, and you've got Saliba covering. This situation is honestly, theoretically, fine. But what I am not seeing Erling Haaland get enough credit for this morning, my friends, is taking all 5 of these players out of the game with one pass, and then keeping all 5 of those players out of the game by being better than they are in, say it with me, transition. When this all starts, he's in line with these 3 Arsenal players. They've all got a fair chance of staying with him, but when they get into the final third, it is 3 versus 2. They have gone in a matter of seconds from this to this. And so that was Pep Guardiola's game plan. He's happy as little Larry. Both his defensive structure and his attacking plan are working, and he gets in a half-time with a 1-0 lead. And I'm going to show you graphically what that sort of meant and then how it changed. And just quickly, keep in mind those possession stats that everyone was tugging themselves off over during the game, the lowest Guardiola's ever had, right? They were practically the same in both halves. 68% for Arsenal in the first half, 67% in the second half, and only 9 passes difference between the two. And yet, in that first half, their passing looked like this. And yes, that is a complete mess and totally indecipherable, right? But just stick with me. It's all their successful passes in the first half, and yes, totally impossible to pick out anything specifically, but we just get rid of all this lot, right? We'll clear these away. Look at where the gaps are. You can start to see the little spaces between the lines as you move up the field, and by the time you get into City's final third, there's lots of spaces. That is what you would expect from a team seeing that much of the ball. Of course you have it at the back, you recycle it, you hold on to it. It gets harder and harder to do things the further up you go, right? But just lock this in your head. And this, I'll do it really suddenly so it looks more dramatic, right? Is how that changed in the second half. Notice that the highest concentration of passes has gone from being here to being 30 or 40 yards further up the pitch. How did that happen? Why did that happen? Did that make a difference in the game? Well, I'll show you, and yes. First off, Arteta didn't wait. Like, Mourinho had Arsenal's highest number of touches in the opposition half and made their only real chance. And Madueke, as we said, was the only player really getting in behind and doing anything, and yet he hooked the pair of them. Now that sounds absolutely insane, obviously, but by bringing Saka on instead of Madueke, you've got someone who does link up really well with the players around him, and as City get deeper and deeper and leave less and less space in behind, there's less point having someone who's trying to get into the space behind. And in Eze, unlike Mourinho, who when they find him between the lines will keep his back to goal and try to bring others into play, you've got someone who will turn, who will take a man on, who will open the opposition up, who can find a pass when you need one, as we will see. And while they didn't exactly carve Man City open, the chances started to arrive. One in the 48th minute, there was one in the 50th minute, there was one in the 52nd minute, one in the 56th minute, one in the 60th minute, and then Pep Guardiola takes one hard look at the situation and says, nah, this. I've seen hundreds of managers try and do a prison yard low block on me over the years. I think it's time I had a go. For quite possibly the very first time in his career, Pep Guardiola makes a team go to a back five that is deeper than the last 15 minutes of Shutter Island. And people are seemingly baffled by this. Why would a manager who has the biggest lob on for possession in the history of the Premier League pull one out from the Neil Warnock big book of bad blocks? Well, I'll tell you why, right? And this might shock you, okay? Pep Guardiola did this because he was already doing this. This is Man City prior to the changes, right? And that is already a 5-4-1. Jurrien Timber's pushed into the attacking line, so that's forced Doku all the way back here. Saka's come in field and has dragged O'Reilly narrow, and Silva has had to leave Haaland to stop any space into Eze. I think, honestly, right, Pep Guardiola's looked at this situation and thought, 1-0 up, 30 minutes to go, away from home, we can't get any control of the game back. We're almost certainly not going to be allowed out of this shape for the remainder of the match, so we might as well just set it up properly. And now Man City have this exact shape, except now, look at the personnel in it. 3 proper centre-backs in the middle, 2 proper defensive midfielders in the centre, 2 central midfielders on the flanks to make it even more solid, and the most energetic, pacey, exciting ball carrier you have at the very top end to drag you up the pitch if you do manage to get it back. So yeah, I get that this looks about as weird a fit for Pep Guardiola as like long, luxurious hair probably would, but it's simply a reflection of the dominance Arsenal were having on the game. This is him reacting to that, not his brain falling out. And to be fair to him, this did work like a charm right up until it didn't. So Man City having this many git big lads on the pitch and leaving no room in front of the goalkeeper changes Arsenal's pass map to this. And this is from pretty much the moment Nico Gonzalez comes on, they take Haaland off and they go properly into this shape. Now, in case it's not immediately clear, right, the red lines here are the unsuccessful passes and crosses, which means as soon as City went into this shape, Arsenal did not have one single box entry. Every single pass was cut out. Every single cross was headed away. Like genuinely, in that entire last 30 minutes of the match, up until the thing happens, right? Arsenal had this header from Calafiori, whatever the hell this was from Calafiori, and that is it. It is not an exaggeration to say that up until the 92nd minute, Pep Guardiola was doing a job on Arsenal. And just that is the problem, my dear friends, with making such a drastic change to who you are and what you do. It is unlikely that many players can stay focused and keep making the right decisions all the way until the end of the game and into injury time. They just forget what all their jobs are. They've left zero space in behind for half an hour, but when a bit of possession naturally pushes them up the pitch, they forget how to reset properly when they lose the ball. And I know that Jamie Carragher and Micah Richards had like a 10-minute long argument on Sky about whether or not the 2 centre-backs should have dropped sooner or later here. But the problem, right, for me, is not actually an individual mistake. It is a series of collective ones. There's not actually anything going on back here which is necessarily a problem if the players here put pressure on the ball. Like, you just cannot, especially this late in the game, be both high as a defensive line and passive as a forward line. It just doesn't work that way. Like, Eze gets on the ball here, who can pick a pass, who's been brought on specifically to make things happen, and not one of these Man City players so much as even motions towards him. They don't even try and rush him. But I would just like to quickly stress before we finish the video that for all people are talking about City making a defensive mistake here, it isn't just about that. Like, yeah, okay, Savinho isn't even looking at Eze when he clips it forward. Ake goes with the run despite being wrong side, and if he doesn't, I think we end up with like a 6 or 7 minute long VAR check that possibly rules this out. And Donnarumma just has no business being here either. Like, Martinelli is going away from the goal with a player harassing him. He doesn't actually have an opening or a chance or a shot unless the ball is bouncing and the goalkeeper is like 15 yards out of his goal. And the thing is, that's all true, but these are not mistakes that it is easy to punish. That is an unbelievably weighted pass, and it's an absolutely top level finish. And you would argue, I would anyway, that Arsenal absolutely deserved at least a point for how much dominance they had in this game. Like, if you're Man City, you're probably asking yourself now, like, well, why did we have to get that defensive? Why couldn't we wrestle any control back of this game? And obviously, if they got to the final whistle and not conceded, we'd probably be applauding Guardiola and saying how adaptable he was, but this was coming. But on the other hand, if you're Arsenal, you're probably looking at that second half going, yeah, okay, we didn't rip Man City open, but look what we did to them. Look how far back we forced them. Look how much better we were than they were with the 11 that started the second half. So why didn't we start with that? And they're interesting questions for which there are even more interesting answers that we will no doubt be addressing in future videos. So if you don't want to miss them, you see what I've done here, subscribe to ACFC on YouTube, and you can get me across all the social medias at Adam Clery, Clery. Why not? Another little plug for the channel memberships. I am earnestly and genuinely so excited that we're getting to do that, because now it means that this stuff becomes more interactive and you can tell us what videos you want us to do and you can join in with the videos when we're actually making them. And oh my God, after everybody asked for 6 months, we finally have an ACFC shirt that you will be able to buy soon, I think, on Amazon. And don't worry, I promise you now, it's not going to be a rip-off. We're going to be really, really well behaved with that. Until next time, it's dead pretty. Isn't it? That's been it from me here, and Manchester City and Arsenal and 1-1. And who's stopping Liverpool? Because it isn't me. Goodbye.